Great. Thanks a lot and good morning to everybody. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to share some of my engagements with Elmarie. And I'm based at the medical school, Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences at Stellenbosch University. So you can see this is going to be interesting. It's a lot more transdisciplinary, perhaps, than what we've heard before. And then just to mention, some of the terms that's come up thus far would apply in my case as well. Quiet, modest, in terms of Elmarie's personality, creative, innovative play, and also being a principled person, and humility as well. So let's just go on to the next slide here. Okay. So it all started for me, my engagement with Elmarie, reflecting a little bit by myself as I did. And I was in this building at that time at the Stellenbosch campus, Department of Physiology. And I was the chairperson of this department, and daily would enter that door, this Mike de Vries building, and would stare at this blank wall in front of me. And I just wondered, can we do something with this blank wall in terms of promoting inclusivity, speaking to social justice, decolonization, because I felt it was lacking such symbology in general on the campus, and especially in the STEM domain, even worse. So that bugged me. I just didn't have a mechanism how to do it. And then I heard a talk from the Transformation Office about visual redress on campus, and they put me in touch with Elmarie Costandius, that I had to speak to her, which I did. So it's the first time I engaged with her, and I mentioned the idea. I've got the blank wall, and what were her thoughts? And she said, no, she would come across to this building. I insisted, actually, no, I'll come to your side because I'm the person in need, so to speak. But no, Elmarie actually didn't give me that opportunity, and rightly so. She wanted to understand the spaces in the building and so on and so on. And so the day of the meeting, it's interesting just to reveal some of her personality. I saw 30 minutes before the meeting, it's time, and I quickly thought of some ideas that I thought would be useful on the wall. Not being an artist myself, I thought of sand and koi art, perhaps the Venda, geometry, and so on. And a kind of timeline, maybe perhaps in a few weeks we get this done and so on. So I was prepared for, and then Elmarie entered the room, a beautiful, quiet demeanor with humility, listened very attentively what I was saying, and then systematically sort of dismantled my whole idea. But it was so beautifully done also at the same time that I admired her for that. And I often mentioned that to her later when we met. And then she would have this naughty chuckle, how she went about putting me in my place, so to speak. But in any case, so we had a nice discussion and decided, Elmarie actually led the discussion, there should be a bottom-up approach. We should look at all the persons in the building. There were 3 departments: chemistry, physiology, animal sciences. So the different disciplines, and also to get in staff, faculty, students, everybody across the spectrum, from the professors to the cleaners. And then we work on this, not my timeline of a few weeks, but let's take it as it comes. A few months this may take, she said. It actually took us almost half a year to do it. So that's how we started the project. And it reminds me then, because it was now for me out of the comfort zone, transdisciplinarity. It reminds me of the Swiss artist who put this film onto a speaker and put on colored little small micro objects there, the different colors, and he switches the speaker on in a split second. You can see how the acoustics meet the visual, and you can capture this with photography. Likewise, my encounter with Elmarie in that sense, and all of us in the building, in fact, because the building was basically STEM sort of people. And so we engaged with Elmarie. She planned for us to meet, and the first meeting was in this room, actually. So basically artists and scientists meeting, which was interesting. And we had discussions. So you can see the room is quite old worldly and all of that. with some scientific equipment, microscopes, and so on. In fact, I've never been into that room myself, or very rarely, and I'm in the same building, and it just spoke to me about the silo type of way we operate, even within disciplines, interdisciplinarity. But so Elmarie initially had a discussion with us about what it meant for us to be at the university in this building, what spoke to us, and she had themes, as we've discussed this morning now: social justice, colonialism, inclusivity, and so forth and so forth. And then after that, we had to capture that onto these huge pieces of paper with crayons and paint. And it was funny how reluctant the guys were initially, all sort of wanting instructions. What do we do? How do we fill the paper? And so it was quite interesting at the sort of level of the disciplines, how people approach that, and eventually venturing a bit more and becoming a bit more bold. At the end, Elmarie would then have feedback from each person, what they thought, and all the ideas that came up. How did the art speak to them? And again, I marveled, and she did this over many months, how she went about this. For me, was always, I loved to watch her to extract that information, because each person she treated with such respect and dignity, and as if it was the most important message, so valued, and then at the same time quietly extracting the essence of that message as part of the collective. Yeah. And so this expanded. Elmarie would bring in all kinds of materials now over months: old books, telephone books, twigs, bird nests, things we're totally not familiar with. And you mentioned play in the earlier sort of discussions. So she even brought somebody from the drama department along at times. And so we had two kinds of movements and play, and to express our thoughts and feelings and in that way as well. And so, in fact, these words began to spread around the building, and other people became jealous because it almost became therapeutic now. It wasn't necessarily about the art, but the process that we undertook, you see. And I think that was, Elmarie wrote about this, that the approach followed was almost education through art, and that we could deal with complex issues, the methodology she employed, because the group obviously were diverse, and each one had a story to tell, a different philosophy, outlook on life, and colonialism, and all our backgrounds, and we could navigate through that and heal through that, through this process. And to me, that was just incredible, the methodology, and I think remarkable how she did that. So within the group itself, and then ultimately producing the artworks as well. And so this was the final sort of artwork that was put together over months and months and months, capturing, and so this was going to be the collage that was going to be put up onto the blank wall. And I got permission from all the other heads of departments that shared this info with them. They were all happy, very pleased with it, no problems with that. And so I went to the transformation office, got 50% of the budget, then went to the dean's office, that time a Faculty of Science, and I got stuck with bureaucracy. The dean's office, one of the senior persons in there blocked this basically on various reasons. You guys didn't follow the procedures, which was not true. This is not scientific enough, they said. What else? And then other kinds of logistical issues. The wall that you're going to put this on is rough. It's going to damage this. The sun will shine on it. So all kinds of excuses. And then Elmarie and myself met and spoke about it. And I saw another side to her in a gentle manner, but the standing up, speaking truth to power. We agreed both very strongly we're not going to change this because of the process. We're going to resist this. And that's what we did. And in fact, Elmarie quipped and said, what do they want us to put a microscope onto this collage? So that was quite funny. But it just highlighted then sort of the corporate university. And so, but COVID struck at that time and we had to park the project. Although it was completed, it just needed to get the budget and the go-ahead from the seniors to put it onto the wall. I'll come back to that. And then after that process, Almari and Aslam Fattar were busy with this book about visual redress at Stellenbosch University. And I saw another side to Almari. She approached me to write a chapter now on visual redress. I laughed at her and I can't write 100 words on this. I'm in a totally different field. And I tried to rebuff her sort of in a nice way several times. She didn't give up though and persisted, nagged me, and I'm glad she did. And eventually, I relented and, and wrote. So it was good because it was a deep reflective process. And through that, through Almari's insistence, actually, it's put me on a path I'm still on today. Because through this process, I uncovered this notion of scientific and medical elitism, and I further worked and expanded on these concepts over the last years. So that's a quote from the chapter I wrote, but I spoke about the institutional bureaucrats, the corporate university, neoliberalism, even academic freedom. We see now it's quite topical, especially like in the US. And this idea of scientific and medical elitism, that is the idea, this is not scientific enough, but I went into it deeper and that actually there's a gap between STEM medicine and the other disciplines. And where would the problem lie? I was asking, came to the conclusion in the training, that we don't talk about these things in the training of scientists and the STEM graduates. It's technical, it's technological, but no reference to socio-political historical context. Put me onto another path. You see, from all of that one to the other, explored some of our spaces and wrote about it that, so this is one of the lecture halls that was in one of the science faculty buildings. Robert Broom, who perpetuated this idea of scientific racism, that there's a biological difference between races. And so there's a quote that, so there's this hierarchy of so-called race, the Bushman being degraded, and is he the remnant of a race as intelligent as ourselves? But up there's the honor for the lecture hall. So that took me to the Tau years, and to further investigate this idea now I've had to look at this knowledge gap through the chapter I wrote and to focus on the context of training of, in my case, biomedical scientists at the postgraduate level. And I worked together with Viv as well, which was also instrumental in this process. I call it the features of science. And so these are some of the issues that we looked at and still looking at. So these are all swear words in my domain now in the medical faculty for students and staff. So, but we soldier on, and I've been doing this now for about 4 years, and it's expanded to answer all the problems, but we can talk about it in the questions if you want. And through my engagements with Almari and also with Viv, and I've made a big focus in this module on humanity. So this definition speaks to me that that's actually what we need, especially in the STEM and in the medicine field, allied health sciences, to develop. And Almari was big on this holistically, our graduates. So there's all the terminologies, knowledgeable citizens, but ultimately fully developed human beings that focus on more than just the molecules, you see. And so part of this honors program was to build into it liaisons with the Department of Visual Arts, where Almari was based, and also with people like Elizabeth Kunter, who's now retired. And so I went across there and spoke to the art students, second years, about heart diseases, the heart's physiology. I took some models, and then they had to capture that, how they see it in terms of their artworks. And then we arranged an exhibition, and we brought the medical guys from medical school to the exhibition and said that I talk to the artists and discuss and explore. This was just post-COVID, so people were still wearing masks. And so there we go. So we had this wonderful engagement and interactions. And Almari took actually some of these photos, I think, if I remember. And so these are some of the artworks. And so what came out, so these are comments from the biomedical science guys. We subsequently capturing all the art, this is their side as well. So one or two, although science often focuses on the detail, this experience taught students to consider the whole and the bigger context and to include humane aspects. Remember our focus. And then expand such viewpoint when focusing on the design of treatments. So when you look at treatments, think a bit bigger and look at human health and well-being holistically. Although these disciplines, science and arts, you see objective, subjectives come from different aspects, there's overlap. The students saw that. And that scientists should take a step back because it's reductionist, it's detail-driven, and to look at more creative thinking and I guess more broadly and holistically. And that can lead to innovation and unique discoveries. Then I wasn't done with Elmarie. She wrote me in now. She started the shared humanity module. I think it was a pilot module at the university. At that time, there was this Camp Pepe report. Remember, there was the urination incident. And so the idea is, still the idea, can we have a module that's done for all first years to get this humanity in across and to work on those aspects? And Elmarie asked me to speak, to do a lecture or two about the physical heart was an idea, and then to link it to the emotional heart. So I had to pull off lessons from the physiology, that the heart is adaptable, for example, if it's under stress, but then bring it into the social domain and the humanities, so to speak, to integrate and to look at it holistically. So again, I appreciated the innovation and the way she went about it, again, to create, promote students with critical and holistic perspectives. Social justice as always, and to look at dismantling pre-existing bias. And so that's the report I spoke about. And she, as mentioned before, was serious about social justice and so on. And looked forward, when we look forward to the humanity module, to look at a comprehensive pedagogical mode and to address discrimination and bias. And so I've taken that now further for myself, and that's why Elmarie was quite inspirational to me. And I've now trying to look at decolonization of medicine in terms of its the research side, teaching and learning side, and the application and practice of it. I'm busy with a book volume on that and also looking at the curricula. So again, stemming from that. And personally, I think Elmarie, my liaisons, engagements with her, I'm almost done, opened up to me this idea of a more complete scholar. Before, I was more focused on this discovery scholarship, and perhaps some of teaching and learning as well. But then with Elmarie, to integrate, to look at transdisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity all the time, and then how to apply that in practice. I'm thinking a lot more, because not only to look for treatments or diagnostic tools, but how do you do this holistically by bearing in mind the community as partners, co-creators of knowledge. Looking at indigenous knowledge now also, how can we look at that in terms of more traditional Western biomedical sciences approaches and so forth. These are some of the things thinking about. So coming back to the wall, the blank wall. So with Elmarie's sad passing, which was a huge shock to us all, they didn't inform me about this because I'd left the faculty 5 years ago. But some of my colleagues, they mentioned, by the way, do you know they've now filled the blank wall? You see, so you can see this is the current status of that building. And you can see my heading there. So they didn't put up the one we wanted. And I guess this would be more in inverted commas scientific. So, but Elmarie's work did find a space in the staff room of that same building, as you can see. And there's a little plaque as well they've put up, that it was created, as I've explained, by postgrad students, academic, non-academic staff members of all diversity, etc. And so they describe what was put up, facilitated by Elmarie Costandias, focusing on those themes that I've mentioned, inclusivity, identity, etc. And so the final collage, she took the photographs herself and arranged it in that way. And so it was put up there. So I just often wonder whether she would be happy with the outcome with this and the final installation. But I think you can be the judge for that. Yeah. Thanks a lot for the time and for the invitation. It's been really special for me to be part of this wonderful colloquium. Thanks.
Sorry, I just realized I was muted, and so
Okay.
you couldn't hear everyone clapping.
Yeah, I didn't really hear anything.
What they did.
Just thought I wasted my time. Nobody heard of this.
So it's really interesting. So if I could just leap in, whether you've discovered similar kinds of projects or initiatives in other parts of the world, kind of crossing medical.
Fascinating question. So, Nikki, sorry, is that the question?
Yeah, I think,
Not
yeah.
many at all. So it is a bit pioneering, and I'm thankful to Elmary. I haven't seen. We've done a book volume now on this, the honors course I did, and when we describe all the things we discuss with the students, so that we can reach a more global audience. It's an international publication, but I haven't seen that really, and so yeah, I need to take this broader. I'm going to speak at a meeting, an international meeting later in the year, so hoping to present that there and go up more people into this kind of work and thinking, which is essential, I think. It's so insulated, I think, the field I'm working in. It's a mindset that people just they just don't have time. They claim for this kind of thing and they see it as soft things. And yeah, so it's a bit of a battle to do that. But I think there are many others who are excited by this prospect at the same time.
Yeah, because so if it's becoming a dialogue, it must be quite a difficult project or initiative or organism to grow because it needs a critical mass, I would imagine, and also to kind of whether you continue it from year to year, how do you carry that prior knowledge and experience over to a new group of students and staff members? So
Yeah,
it's a kind of thing that is really requires such tender, loving care.
it does. And it's
Yeah.
good time. And remember, it's not, I've got so many other things to do. So,
Mm.
but I take that care and I'm trying to build up a cohort of staff members now because it can't be person dependent, as you're alluding. And then in terms of the students, we've expanded it this year. We've done it, we're building onto the previous work from Elmony. So we've brought this year the art students to the medical school. And so there is a morphology museum. And so we brought them into that space. So they were surrounded by these specimens. I gave my little blurb again about the heart and disease and so on. But then they had to draw in that space
Yeah.
and do their work. And actually, one student didn't want to return and said, "No, I felt discomfort." And then what I did differently this year, it was an exploration. The honors course is all discussive in groups. And at that day, it was sort of fortuitous. The art students were also here. And I said, I want you now to come up to the lecture hall. And then I put them as part of the groups of the discussions. And so we had now, for the first time, actually now, the two parties sitting together in the same group discussing the same topic. So that was also interesting. So I need to build on that further and formalize that a bit more for the next iteration. But my concern is, like you say, the TLC and nurture this to grow to a larger critical mass because the risk is that it would be just person dependent and would die out again.
Yeah, because there are people doing such exciting work. I'm thinking of Veronica, who's sitting in the room with us. When I was at art school, my lecturer then, Julia Rosa Clark, had a project at the a little museum space at CriSTaL where she invited art students to and artists to kind of make with that space. She curated various exhibitions and things, which are incredibly exciting. And yeah, it felt like such another world that we were entering into. And then there's Leonard Shapiro, who I think does drawing with medical students at UCT. So it feels like there are these little baby plants growing, these little, I don't know how the right terminology, that really could blossom,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. It's beautiful work you're doing.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think what I'm
Yeah.
thinking next would be, and I don't know the bureaucracy, but I'd like to, a radical idea, get even the arts and perhaps journalists, some students as well, into
Yeah.
the module as a full, because and they become part of the discussions and they can still do
Yeah.
their part. But I think what I discovered now is when we spoke with the art students in the group discussions, totally different perspectives
Mm.
on what, and that was refreshing and sort of, yeah, it was fascinating. And for them as well, to be in our
Yeah.
space, they found that fascinating. So
Yeah.
beyond the art, I think now that
Yeah.
we engage at the level of knowledge exchange.
Yeah. Um, if I can say one more thing, unless does anyone else want to say anything so long? I feel like I'm hogging you. But just the examples you showed of the wall that is now there, the images that are there, and then the Elmery images, for lack of a better way of describing it. The one was so representational, these kind of sexy images of nature and how beautiful it is looking through a macro
Yeah.
lens or whatever, which is beautiful. But then that other wall of really is alive with thinking and generating knowledge and exploring different ways of making and breathing and showing and being knowledge. And it's such a marked contrast. And I'm not trying to pit the one against the other, but it does feel like what you're trying to do, what you and Elmri are trying to do, is so much more um, forward-looking, more futuring, more, yeah, alive somehow.
Yeah.